So the 49ers have a reunion with Russell Wilson and the Denver Broncos this week. Of course, the same Russell Wilson who quarterbacked against the 49ers for so many years in Seattle. And if you followed any Seahawks football, which I'm sure you did, if you follow the 49ers, then you probably grew familiar with the mantra in Seattle over the years, let Russ cook. The goal of the mantra was to encourage Seattle coach Pete Carroll and his offensive staff to allow Russell Wilson to sling the ball over the field, to throw not only at higher volume, but with more aggressiveness. So now we shift focus to Jimmy Garoppolo, who's taken over for Trey Lance as the 49ers' top quarterback following the season-ending injury to Lance on Sunday against the Seahawks, Carroll and the Seahawks. Right in between this game against the Seahawks and Russell Wilson, in fact, on Sunday, it just is so fitting that we might have something new brewing, a new movement brewing, and maybe we can call it the Let Jimmy Cook movement. And we get this information from Jimmy Garoppolo himself following the game. That's what I wrote about today in the Athletic. Piece came out this morning. Here it is. I'm going to copy and paste this link into the chat section, also to the comment section later on. But here's the gist of it. The 49ers' expectations for Jimmy Garoppolo as he replaces the injured Trey Lance. And there is a fascinating line of dialogue and quote from Jimmy Garoppolo that encouraged me to open up a deeper look into Garoppolo's past with the 49ers and what we can expect here in 2022 moving forward. So check out the article, $1 a month for the Athletic. There's a big sale going on, still going on. It is in both the chat and the comment sections. All right, so as far as letting Jimmy cook, why don't we just do a brief synopsis of Jimmy Garoppolo's time with the 49ers. He arrived in a trade from New England in 2017. Act 1 was the final 5 starts of that 2017 season. Jimmy Garoppolo averaged nearly 9 air yards per attempt. That ranked 12th out of qualifying quarterbacks in the NFL. So he was throwing the ball further downfield than the average quarterback. And his efficiency was absolutely elite. Jimmy Garoppolo was number 1 across the board, ahead of Brady. I mean, it's still prime Brady at that point. A lot of guys, Rodgers, Brady, all those guys were under Garoppolo as far as efficiency splits went at the end of the 2017 season. It was called the Jimmy G Magic. It earned Jimmy Garoppolo a record QB contract, despite the fact that he only had 7 total starts to his name in 2018. And it still goes down in the books as the standard of Jimmy Garoppolo play over the course of his career. However, in 2018, in just the 3rd game at Kansas City, Jimmy Garoppolo tore his ACL. So that season went down the drain. When Garoppolo returned in 2019, Act 2 began. The common conception is that Jimmy Garoppolo's ACL tear led to a change of style in his play. All of a sudden, instead of being in the upper half of the league in terms of air yards per attempt, Jimmy Garoppolo dropped nearly 2 full air yards per attempt from 8.9 to 7. And he, since 2019, has ranked last of 29 qualifying quarterbacks in air yards per attempt at 7.0. So stylistically, Garoppolo's game has completely changed. Now, we must mention that Garoppolo is still has been very efficient. It's not like he turned into a bad quarterback. He's not the elite efficiency guy that he was over that small sample in 2017. But from 2019 to 2021, Jimmy Garoppolo was solidly efficient, not great, but also stylistically very different than he was in 2017. So that leads us to today, because obviously after 2021, the page turned to a new chapter. It looked for a long time that Jimmy Garoppolo would no longer be part of the 49ers. The 49ers thought that, Jimmy thought that, and then came the reunion when the 49ers signed Jimmy Garoppolo to be their backup quarterback just a few weeks ago. And now, of course, he's going to be back in that starting role with Trey Lance done for the season. And we could fittingly say that Act 3 has begun. And the question is, what will Act 3 entail? Because after the game, I went up to Jimmy Garoppolo in the locker room, And we started chatting. And I thought it was remarkable in this football game that Jimmy came out. And I think a lot of it might have had to do with the fact that this was Trey Lance's game plan. And we know that the game plan for Trey Lance is going to be built around Trey's strengths. Trey has better touch on the deeper passes than he does on the shorter passes. So the 49ers had the offense more stretched out. But Jimmy Garoppolo came in and just started firing away. 5 passes downfield, boom, boom, boom. Maybe the nicest pass that he's made in a 49ers uniform, maybe in an NFL uniform period, was dropped by Brandon Ayuk. It traveled over 40 yards in the air. It went to the sideline. He dropped it in a bucket. Ayuk just couldn't hold on to it. And the throw to Dwelly was also outside the numbers. That one, though, Dwelly was wide open, so I don't think that Garoppolo people are going to look at that throw all too closely. It was still a very good throw, had a lot of pop coming out of his arm. And it just showed that, A, Jimmy is probably fresh. He was hurt, obviously, down the stretch run of last season, 2 arm injuries during the playoffs. But B, it seemed to be a new freewheeling version of Garoppolo that we hadn't seen, at least in several years. And this is exactly what I talked to Jimmy about at his locker after the game. And I will tell you that he was absolutely thrilled to have had the chance to push the ball downfield like that. Absolutely thrilled to have had that chance. And to me, this is one of the more significant developments that we have started to track, learn, whatever, regarding Garoppolo's relationship with Kyle Shanahan and his overall place within the 49ers offense. So we talked, and I could sense the excitement from Garoppolo about what happened. I could sense that he wanted this to continue. So I asked him about the phenomenon at the post-game press conference. And here was Jimmy Garoppolo's answer to my question about added aggressiveness at the start of this game against the Seahawks.
Felt good. We were talking earlier, kind of felt like 2017, whereas, just go throwing, make plays. That's what I like to do. It's different than what we usually do around here, but, sometimes you need to do that.
Okay, one more time for those who didn't hear in the back. Listen again. Listen really closely.
Felt good. We were talking earlier, kind of felt like 2017, whereas, just go throwing, make plays. That's what I like to do. It's different than what we usually do around here, but sometimes you need to do that.
So he was referring when he said when we were talking about 2017, it felt like 2017. He was referring to the conversation that we had in the locker room. So it was obvious that Jimmy Garoppolo wanted this to, he said it in his press conference. He wanted this on the record. He wanted this to get out there in public. And he didn't talk about 2017 all too often. And I noted that in this article that I wrote about Jimmy Garoppolo. 2017, kind of a bygone era, right? It was pre-ACL tear. Stuff has changed. But 2017, Jimmy Garoppolo came in not knowing the playbook. He didn't have a playbook, they say, this offseason. I'm sure he knows it after years of the 49ers. But he came in not knowing the playbook. He came in a way kind of freewheeling, going off script, airing it out, as we know, through that air yards number. And he saw excellent results. So the fact that Jimmy Garoppolo said that it felt like 2017 this past weekend when things were a little bit different, where you just go out throwing, make plays. That's what I like to do. And then he added this. It's different than what we usually do around here, but sometimes you need that. What we usually do around here. Well, what the 49ers usually do is throw a lot of short passes, set up yards after the catch, and obviously run a lot, 45 runs for 189 yards. The quarterback has a lot of responsibility in those runs too, with motions, checks, getting the 49ers in the right run play. And that, I don't expect that to change, but I do think that we might see a different Jimmy Garoppolo in Act 3. And I think it might be a hybrid of Act 1. I think we might see some more air yards like we did at the start of this outing against the Seahawks, and something that takes from Act 2. Because Act 2 saw the 49ers accentuate their weapons and yards after the catch. And the 49ers, the thing about 2017, even though Garoppolo was so good, they didn't have the weapons that they do now. They didn't have Deebo Samuel. I know they had George Kittle, but they didn't have Brandon Ayuk. They didn't really have the yards after the catch monsters, the yak monsters that they do today. So you can't discount the fact that Garoppolo's got a really good short game and that you need to set up guys like Deebo Samuel and Brandon Ayuk and George Kittle for after the catch. So I don't think you could freewheel it completely like 2017. You needed to choreograph it so that you do set up the yards after the catch. But there is something to be said about what Garoppolo said in answer to my question at that press conference. There really is, because that's when he's played his best football for the 49ers, his best carefree football for the 49ers. And guess what? Jimmy's got a lot of power right now. The 49ers are very, very reliant on Jimmy Garoppolo because the next option at quarterback is Brock Purdy. So when we talk about letting Jimmy cook, I think that it's probably something the 49ers are going to have to do, and it's probably something that's best for the 49ers because you want the quarterback to rediscover his best efficiency. It was a promising start in that regard for the 49ers against the Seattle Seahawks, but this story is still unwritten, and we're going to see how Act 3 goes. So that's what I wrote about in this piece on The Athletic. There is, a lot of data that I went through. We talked, a lot about the efficiency that Jimmy Garoppolo has posted. I mean, don't underestimate the efficiency that Jimmy Garoppolo has shown. Well, we could, why don't we just do this? Why don't we look at this sucker right here, make this graph big. Take this up to the full screen. All right, I want make this. Okay, so you guys could probably zoom. Well, if I go in here, yeah, this will make it bigger. You want to be higher and to the right of this graph. And Jimmy Garoppolo's dot has been the same since 2017 to 2022. In 2017, it was higher. But if you aggregate his performance with the 49ers, he's always had a dot in the upper right quadrant, which is really good. Right here, you can see I'm circling it with the cursor. Trey Lance, through very limited action, bottom left. You don't want to be there. The goal for the 49ers this year was to develop Trey Lance over the course of the season to move as close as possible to where Jimmy Garoppolo's dot is. So for that, Trey Lance was going to have to get more accurate, which is the x-axis. He was going to have to get more efficient, which is the y-axis. But you could see the gap between Garoppolo and Lance. This is why we say that the 49ers right now are better with Jimmy Garoppolo than with Trey Lance as starting quarterback. But the plan for them, was going to be a risky situation. The plan for them was to try to get Trey Lance to this point before the playoffs. They were trying to walk a high wire act to get Trey Lance to this point of efficiency. But right here, you can't underestimate how efficient the 49ers offense has been under Jimmy Garoppolo. People always act like he's just a guy. Well, if he was just a guy, his dot wouldn't be all the way up here. This might be a fairly rudimentary look at what's going on, but Garoppolo has consistently posted good efficiency and good accuracy, and that's even considering the turnover problem that he has had. The efficiency includes the interceptions. That's all part of this profile. So we can't underestimate what he has brought the 49ers offense, and I think it's really important to take what Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch have said about this situation and apply it to our analysis of the 49ers thought process. And it's our main issue with Jimmy Garoppolo has been his inability to stay healthy. Obviously, Trey Lance has not now stayed healthy. So ironically, that's given Jimmy Garoppolo another chance. So perhaps the biggest key, the thing that we really need to watch in this season is, can Jimmy stay healthy? And if Jimmy does stay healthy, will Kyle let him cook, just given the fact that Jimmy's been through the ringer? He's, been demoted to QB2. Now he's back up to that starting quarterback role. Is he going to enter this with the kind of reckless abandon that we might have seen in Act 1 in 2017? That's the big question to me. And it's going to be a fascinating one because the 49ers do have a good team around Jimmy Garoppolo. And I do think a hybrid of Act 1 and Act 2 with the Yak Monsters to create Act 3 will be something that is especially intriguing for the 49ers. So anyway, if you guys want more of this kind of content, the article is right here. The 49ers expectations for Jimmy Garoppolo as he replaces the injured Trey Lance. I'm going to put this into the chat section one more time. We live at a fascinating crossroads in 49ers history. The Trey Lance development has been put on the shelf here for at least a few months after he underwent successful surgery at Stanford the other day. And now we get to see what yet another chapter of Jimmy Garoppolo brings the 49ers. And based on what he told me, based on that answer that you saw in that video in the press conference, that this could get interesting. This could be good for the 49ers as well. These stories are never flat, right? They're always fluid. You're either getting better or you're getting worse. Jimmy Garoppolo's dot on that EPA chart might be consistent in the aggregate, but if we remember the details, there is inconsistency. There are injuries. There, in this case, might be a stylistic shift in the other direction from the one that we saw from 2017 to 2019. Maybe the stylistic shift from 2021 to 2022 will be just as pronounced, but in the opposite way. So I'm just excited to track this. I think this is all great theater for us as we move forward. All right, guys, I am going to leave this here. The sun is starting to shine kind of weirdly through the window. It's starting to shine on my face. Probably not the best time to do an Instagram or to do a YouTube live, but I wanted to get the article up to you. Jimmy Garoppolo, will the 49ers let him cook? What will he look like this season? All questions to be answered. Make sure to check out the article. Subscribe to The Athletic. That's where it's at, $1 a month. And welcome to our 2022 49ers coverage. Like the video, sub to the channel. We'll see you all soon. Have a great rest of your Tuesday.